I wasn't supposed to walk in. But I did. And what I saw my cousin doing, with his own hands, I still can't unsee it. What happened next? Let's just say, I made a choice most people would never dare. Before I tell you the rest, hit that subscribe button. Your support helps this channel grow, and trust me, you don't want to miss stories like this. I wasn't supposed to walk in. But I did. My aunt had asked me to bring over some old photo albums from the garage, just stuff from when we were all kids. I hadn't seen my cousin Marcus in a while, and honestly, I didn't even know he was home. His car wasn't in the driveway. So I didn't knock. I opened the door and stepped inside, calling out, "Hey. It's just me." No answer. I went down the hallway toward his room. That's when I heard it, this soft, rhythmic sound. Like movement. I stopped. It could have been anything, right? Maybe he was working out. Maybe he was watching something. I wish it was either of those things. I pushed the door open, slowly, and God. He was there. Sitting on the edge of the bed. Shirtless. Shorts pulled halfway down. Phone in one hand. The other hand on himself. I froze. He didn't notice at first. I stood there like an idiot. My breath caught in my throat. My chest tight. And then, he looked up. We locked eyes. For one awkward, horrifying second, neither of us moved. He scrambled to cover himself, dropping his phone, his face turning pale, then flushed like a fire alarm had gone off inside him. I immediately turned around and backed out, slamming the door behind me. My heart was racing. What the hell did I just walk in on? Why didn't he lock the door? Why didn't I knock? I stood in the kitchen, debating whether to leave or wait it out. But before I could decide, he came out. Hoodie thrown over himself, eyes low, shame all over his face. He mumbled, "You weren't supposed to be here yet." I shrugged. You weren't supposed to be doing that with the door wide open. He sat down on the couch, avoiding eye contact. And I swear to you, I should have just left it alone. Should have grabbed my keys and pretended it never happened. But something about how small he looked, how embarrassed, how real it all felt, maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was something darker inside me, I sat next to him. And then I said something I still can't believe came out of my mouth. "What were you watching?" He blinked. "Huh?" "On your phone," I said. "What was it?" He hesitated. Then, slowly, he turned the phone toward me. And that's when things really got complicated. He turned the screen toward me. At first, I didn't even register what I was looking at. Just flashes of skin, soft moans, a woman's breathy voice. Then it clicked, he hadn't just been watching something casual. This was raw, intimate, and oddly, artistic. Like something made to feel real, not staged. He must have seen the way I reacted. I didn't say anything, just stared, lips parted slightly, unsure if I should be shocked or something else. Then he said quietly, "I don't usually watch stuff like this." It just popped up. I nodded. Still no words. The air between us was too heavy. You could feel it pressing down like a thick blanket, suffocating and strangely magnetic. "I'm sorry you saw that," he added, glancing at me. His voice cracked a little. "I didn't want you to think." "It's fine," I cut in, finally finding my voice. "You don't have to explain." But my voice didn't sound normal. It was softer. Not exactly forgiving, more like inviting. We sat there in silence. The video was still paused on his screen. I couldn't stop glancing at it. Not because of what was happening on the screen, but because something else inside me had started to stir. something I wasn't ready to admit. Maybe it was the years of unresolved tension, growing up side by side, laughing too hard at inside jokes, the times we play wrestled on the floor as kids, and the way, as we got older, we both pulled away from that kind of contact without really saying why. He looked over at me again. This time longer. Eyes searching. "You're not gonna tell anyone, right?" I looked at him. "I haven't even figured out what I just saw yet," I said. And then, quietly, without thinking, I added, "or how it made me feel." He blinked. And that's when everything shifted. He blinked. That one sentence, "or how it made me feel," hung in the air like a match slowly burning down to the fingertips. He looked at me, then looked away, pretending to scroll or swipe something on his phone, but I knew he wasn't really seeing the screen anymore. He was doing what I was doing, trying to pretend this wasn't happening. But it was. The space between us on the couch didn't feel safe anymore. It felt electric. Alive. I could hear every breath. The soft hum of the fridge in the kitchen. The faint tick of the clock on the wall. Ordinary sounds, suddenly loud in a moment that felt anything but ordinary. "Why did you say that?" he finally asked, without looking at me. "I don't know," I said. "I guess because I'm tired of pretending I don't feel things when I do." He turned his head toward me slowly. Our eyes locked. There wasn't judgment in his face. Just curiosity. And fear. And something else, something unspoken and deep, maybe even ancient, like a thread that had always connected us, but we'd never dared to pull. "We're cousins," he said. "I know. This is messed up." "I know," I said again. "But what if messed up doesn't always mean wrong? What if it just means complicated?" He leaned back and rubbed his face with both hands. I could see him trying to process it, trying to climb out of the moment, but it was like trying to climb out of a dream when your body won't wake up. He finally looked at me again and said, "You came here to drop off old family photo albums, and now we're sitting here like we're about to ruin everything." "Maybe it was always meant to be ruined," I whispered. "Maybe we've been too good at pretending nothing was there. And now we've cracked it open." There was a long silence. Then he said something I'll never forget. "You remember that night at the lake house?" I froze. Of course I remembered. I hadn't thought about it in years, but now it rushed back like a flood, me and him, 17 and 19, a thunderstorm outside, everyone else asleep. We had ended up sitting alone on the screen porch, wrapped in one blanket, watching the lightning cut across the water. At one point, he had brushed my hand. I had pulled away too quickly, pretending it was a mistake. But it wasn't. And we both knew it. "You wanted to kiss me that night," I said softly. He nodded slowly. "And you wanted me to." We both sat in the weight of that memory, our minds spinning between what was, what wasn't, and what could have been if we hadn't been so scared. Then he shifted toward me. "So what do we do now?" "I don't know," I said, voice barely audible. "But I don't want to pretend anymore." He looked into my eyes for a long time. There was no rush. No sudden move. Just that unbearable closeness. That storm again, but this time inside both of us. His hand reached out slowly, tentative, and landed gently on my knee. It stayed there. No movement. Just warmth. Contact. Truth. And that's when I realized this wasn't about lust. It wasn't about crossing lines or shocking anyone. It was about longing, the kind of slow-burning hunger that doesn't scream but whispers over years. The kind you try to bury under family roles and social rules. The kind that only waits. Patiently. "Hey dear, did you know that more than 90% of people watching haven't subscribed yet?" If you're enjoying the stories we share, just take a moment to hit that subscribe button. It's totally free and help us keep creating the content you love. You wanted to kiss me that night, I said softly. He nodded slowly. And you wanted me to. We both sat in the weight of that memory, our minds spinning between what was, what wasn't, and what could have been if we hadn't been so scared. Then he shifted toward me. So what do we do now? I don't know, I said, voice barely audible. But I don't want to pretend anymore. He looked into my eyes for a long time. There was no rush. No sudden move. Just that unbearable closeness. That storm again, but this time inside both of us. His hand reached out slowly, tentative, and landed gently on my knee. It stayed there. No movement. Just warmth. Contact. Truth. And that's when I realized this wasn't about lust. It wasn't about crossing lines or shocking anyone. It was about longing, the kind of slow-burning hunger that doesn't scream but whispers over years. The kind you try to bury under family roles and social rules. The kind that only waits. Patiently. Maybe nothing would happen that day. Maybe nothing could happen. But something had awakened. And neither of us would be able to put it back to sleep. His hand was still resting on my knee. The air hadn't moved in what felt like a decade. It was like time had slowed down on purpose to trap us in this limbo of half confession, half hunger. The silence between us was filled with invisible dialogue. Neither of us said anything, but 1,000 thoughts were screaming across that narrow space between our bodies. Then, suddenly, his stomach growled. Loudly. We both blinked. Then looked at each other. And then, just like that, we laughed. The tension cracked for a second, releasing a pressure that had built up since the moment I opened his bedroom door. Oh my God, I said, wiping a tear from the corner of my eye. You literally ruined the moment with your intestines. He grinned, shrugging. They didn't ask for this responsibility. I stood up, still laughing a little, and said, Come on. Let's get something to eat before your stomach eats you. He followed me into the kitchen like a confused dog who wasn't sure if we were still having a crisis or not. We opened the fridge. It was, predictably, a tragic place, half a bottle of expired ranch, a lemon that had aged into an elder lemon, and a single slice of cold pizza folded over like it was trying to hide from God. He held up the pizza. Want to share a mystery meat slice of disappointment? I took it and popped it in the microwave. That's our entire relationship in a metaphor. We leaned against the counter. The microwave hummed. I could feel him watching me out of the corner of his eye. Not like a predator, but like someone reading the last page of a book he thought he'd finished years ago, only to realize it had a secret chapter he wasn't supposed to find. I never asked you, he said slowly, but did you ever tell anyone? About the lake house? Or, the almost kiss? I shook my head. No one. That night felt like a dream, Marcus. Like it didn't belong in the same universe as reality. He nodded, biting his lip like he was remembering something he'd hidden even from himself. I dated girls after that, he said, almost defensively. Like, normal ones. Like, outside the family ones. I snorted. Congratulations. Should we call the mayor and announce your emotional stability? The microwave beeped. He handed me the plate and we sat at the table, sharing the slice like middle schoolers who didn't know how to divide a pizza without ruining their friendship. It was quiet for a bit, but this time it was a peaceful quiet. Less thunderstorm, more snowfall. Then, he got a funny look on his face. Do you ever think we're just weird characters in someone's messed up story? I paused, chewing. Like, someone's watching us? He nodded. Yeah. Like we're just fictional people inside some narrator's head, and they're just sitting there thinking, let's throw in some cousin drama today for fun. I burst out laughing. Well, if we are imaginary, then I hope they at least give me a good backstory. Like a tragic love affair in Paris or a pet alpaca named Kevin. Oh, definitely. Kevin the alpaca. Classic. The laughter faded, but the smile lingered. There was something freeing about imagining we weren't real. That this was all part of some chaotic, fictional universe where emotions didn't always follow the rules and connections didn't have to come with shame. We both sat there, strangely comforted by the idea that our confusion might not be our fault, that maybe the universe, or a bored writer, was the one spinning the weirdness and we were just characters playing our part. He sighed. So what do we do now? I leaned back. We do what all good fictional people do when they realize they're trapped in an uncomfortable plot. He raised an eyebrow. And that is? I grinned. We mess it up on purpose. After that moment, when I caught a glimpse of him, unintended, but undeniable, the image didn't leave my mind. It was strange how something so private, so forbidden, could suddenly be seared into memory with such clarity. I found myself thinking about it when I least expected it, like a secret song playing quietly beneath everything else. It wasn't just the physical reality of what I saw. It was the vulnerability in the way he stood there, unaware, completely unguarded. It was the way light fell on his skin, the subtle rise and fall of his breath, the quiet confidence mixed with hesitance that made him human, real, and startlingly close. Sometimes I wondered if he knew what effect that moment had on me. Maybe he did, in his own way, the way he looked at me afterwards, like he was measuring boundaries and wondering which ones we were about to cross. I tried to tell myself it was just curiosity, or the way the mind plays tricks when two people share too many years and too many unspoken words. But deep down, I knew it was more. Something stirring beneath the surface. Something that neither of us wanted to say out loud. And in those quiet moments, when I imagined what it would be like to touch, to taste, to explore that forbidden closeness, my heart beat faster, not from guilt, but from an ache I hadn't named yet. One night, the house was quieter than usual. The kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel like a secret waiting to be uncovered. I found myself unable to sleep, the memory of that day tangled with a restless energy I couldn't shake. So I got up and wandered into the living room, where the dim glow of the street lamp filtered through the curtains. He was there, too. Sitting on the worn leather couch, the same one where we'd shared that strange, charged afternoon. He looked up when I entered, surprised but not entirely, like maybe he had been waiting for me. I can't sleep either, he said, voice low, almost hesitant. I sat down beside him, careful not to close the distance too quickly but not wanting to put too much space between us either. The air felt thick, as if every breath we took was a thread weaving us closer. We talked quietly at first, about everything and nothing, the way you do when you're avoiding the real conversation but can't quite stop yourself from inching toward it. Then, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, he reached out. Not with words, but with a hand that brushed lightly against mine. It wasn't demanding. It wasn't certain. It was a question. I didn't pull away. Instead, I turned my hand so our fingers intertwined, and the tiny spark that passed between us was almost like electricity, soft but undeniable. That night, nothing more needed to be said. In that quiet space, we shared something that was more than words, more than rules, more than what the world outside could understand. I kept thinking about how close we were, the way his skin felt just inches from mine, and the way every small movement seemed amplified in the dark. I wondered how it could be that someone I had known all my life could suddenly feel so new, so thrillingly out of reach and yet so incredibly close. And in the back of my mind, a whisper asked, what would happen if we stopped pretending? What would happen if we finally let ourselves be seen, fully, without masks or apologies? That night, as I finally drifted toward sleep, the answer felt both terrifying and impossible to resist. His hand lingered just a little longer than before, the warmth of his skin seeping through the fabric of my pants. The contact was electric, silent, and charged, like the quiet before a storm. I felt my breath catch, heart pounding in a rhythm I hadn't known was possible. It was as if every nerve in my body had suddenly awakened, attuned to the smallest movement, the slightest touch. His fingers traced slow, tentative patterns, a language without words. I didn't pull away. Instead, I let the moment stretch, fragile and infinite. The room felt smaller somehow, the space between us dissolving like mist. The dim light cast shadows that danced across his face, highlighting the intensity in his eyes, the mix of hesitation, longing, and something deeper, unspoken. We were both holding our breath, caught between the past we couldn't change and the future we weren't sure we dared to imagine. For a long time, nothing else existed but that quiet connection, his touch, my response, the uncharted territory unfolding between us. The night stretched on, heavy with unspoken words and the electricity of what might be. His fingers didn't rush, every movement was deliberate, as if he was testing the waters of a sea neither of us had dared to sail before. I could feel my pulse quicken beneath his touch, the quiet thrill of crossing a boundary that had always felt invisible until now. There was something almost sacred about the moment, the way time slowed, how the world outside seemed to fade until all that remained was the fragile thread connecting us. I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, mirrored by the same storm inside me. Neither of us wanted to break the spell, yet neither knew how long it could hold. We stayed like that, suspended between what had been and what could be, the silence speaking louder than any words ever could. The vulnerability between us was raw and real, a delicate dance where every glance and breath mattered. In that stillness, I realized how much more there was beneath the surface, memories, regrets, desires, and how this night, this moment, was a turning point neither of us had anticipated. The next morning arrived quietly, sunlight slipping through the curtains and painting soft patterns across the room. We woke up in the same space, the weight of the night before lingering like a whispered secret neither dared to speak aloud. There was a new tension between us, not awkwardness, but something more fragile and charged. Every glance carried the weight of unspoken questions. Every smile hinted at the possibility of something neither of us fully understood yet. As the day went on, normalcy tried to settle in, but it couldn't quite mask the shift beneath the surface. Casual touches, accidental brushes of the hand, they all felt amplified, electric, as if the world had subtly rearranged itself around that one night. We found ourselves stealing moments, quiet corners of conversation where the outside world faded and it was just the two of us, trying to figure out what this all meant. It wasn't easy. There was guilt, confusion, and the ever-present question of what was right or wrong. But beneath it all, an undeniable connection was growing, pulling us closer with every passing day. I caught myself thinking about him when I wasn't supposed to, wondering what he was feeling, what he was thinking, and whether he was as tangled up in this as I was. And with every thought, the line between family and something else blurred a little more. The line between family and something else blurred a little more each day, and the tension grew thicker beneath every smile and casual word. We both tried to pretend it was nothing, an illusion born of fatigue or loneliness, but the truth simmered just below the surface, impossible to ignore. One afternoon, we found ourselves alone again, the world outside the room fading into a distant hum. The air felt charged, like a storm held in delicate balance. Our eyes met, and in that instant, all the carefully constructed walls came crashing down. "I don't know what this is," he whispered, voice rough with uncertainty. "But I can't pretend it doesn't exist anymore." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his confession settle deep in my chest. "Neither can I admitted, the words barely more than a breath. It was as if, by saying it out loud, we gave life to the impossible, the forbidden pull between us that had been growing since that first stolen moment. We weren't sure where this would lead or if it could ever be right. But for the first time, the silence was broken, and with it, the possibility of something real, something raw and unfiltered, began to take shape. In that quiet room, we stood on the edge of a new reality, both terrified and unable to turn away. As they stood on the edge of that new reality, uncertainty hung heavy between them, but neither could deny the pull drawing them closer. Days turned into weeks, and every encounter was laced with a mix of longing and restraint, a silent battle between desire and doubt. He started leaving subtle notes, small messages tucked away where only she would find them. Each one was a whisper of connection, a secret shared in the quiet moments. And she found herself writing back, her words trembling with the weight of feelings she barely understood. Their conversations grew deeper, peeling back layers they'd both kept hidden for years. They spoke of dreams, fears, and the parts of themselves they rarely showed anyone else. The boundaries that once defined them blurred further, replaced by a fragile trust that neither had expected to find. But the outside world loomed, a constant reminder of the risks and consequences that lay ahead. Every smile held a question: could they keep this secret? Should they? And what would it mean for the family they both loved? Despite the turmoil, one thing was clear: they couldn't turn back. What had begun as a moment of curiosity had blossomed into something neither could ignore, a connection that challenged everything they thought they knew about themselves and each other. And so, with hearts pounding and minds swirling, they stepped forward together, uncertain of the path but unwilling to let go. Days slipped by with a quiet intensity, the kind of tension that isn't loud but somehow impossible to ignore. It wasn't just the stolen moments or secret notes, it was the way ordinary things started to feel different. The scent of his cologne lingering in the hallway long after he'd passed. The accidental touch when passing in the kitchen, brief but charged. The way his eyes searched hers in crowded rooms, as if trying to find a secret only they shared. But no one else noticed. At least, not yet. To the outside world, they were still just cousins, close, maybe a little too familiar, but nothing more. Yet beneath the surface, their relationship was shifting in ways neither dared to speak aloud. She found herself replaying conversations in her mind, analyzing every word and glance. Was he feeling the same conflict? Was he as caught in this web as she was? The uncertainty was maddening, but it also held a strange kind of comfort, proof that they weren't alone in this. At night, when the house grew silent and shadows deepened, her thoughts spiraled. She wondered what this meant for her sense of self, for the boundaries she'd always lived by. Could love, even this complicated, forbidden kind, reshape who she was? Could it erase the lines drawn by family, by society, by years of should and should not? Meanwhile, he was wrestling with his own demons. He kept a careful distance during the day, burying his feelings beneath casual smiles and jokes. But in quiet moments, he was haunted by the possibility of losing everything: his family, their trust, the life they'd both known. Their secret was a fragile thread stretched taut between desire and fear, hope and guilt. And as the days wore on, the question loomed larger than ever: how much could they risk before the delicate balance shattered? After the secret was exposed, the house felt different, like the air had thickened with unspoken questions and fractured trust. Every glance from family members was weighted, every conversation cautious and measured. They weren't just looking at us anymore, she realized. They were searching for answers, for something to hold onto amidst the shock. In the quiet moments, I saw the pain in his eyes, the same pain mirrored in mine. We had stepped into a world where the rules no longer applied, and now, we had to navigate the consequences of our choices. Some family members withdrew, unable or unwilling to understand. Others confronted us directly, their voices a mixture of anger, confusion, and sorrow. Each encounter felt like walking through glass, fragile, sharp, and full of risk. But in the midst of the chaos, there were rare moments of unexpected grace, those who asked questions not out of judgment but from a desire to understand, to hold on to love even when it was complicated. For us, it was a reckoning, not just with the family, but with ourselves. Could we forgive our own mistakes? Could we accept the parts of ourselves that had been hidden or denied for so long? Some days, the weight felt unbearable. Other days, it brought us closer in ways we hadn't imagined possible. Because when everything else seemed to crumble, the one thing we still had was each other, a fragile, complicated bond that neither time nor judgment could erase easily. And so, step by step, we began to rebuild, not the life we had before, but a new one, shaped by truth, pain, and the possibility of healing. If this story got you thinking, drop a comment below. I want to hear your take. And don't forget to like, share, and hit that subscribe button to support the channel.